Fish on. I don't know what size it is. It's swimming upstream really fast. I think it's just a little one. Yeah. Just a little guy, but good to see. Beautiful. Just a double red maggot. I'll go through the setup, guys, of the float, etc. It's much the same as last season. I'm using a slightly heavier float at the start of the season just to see how it goes. It's more for visibility than anything else. It's an absolutely beautiful winter's morning. Although it was freezing cold this morning, you know, -3. The sun's been out since daybreak, and it's certainly putting a little bit of heat into me, which helps, and obviously it stops the rod guides from icing up as well. Yeah, it's just lovely being back on the river, and especially because it's such a nice day as well, and the fish are biting. There's a fish on. fighting hard. Although they all fight hard in this current. Oh, it's off. Ah, that was a big meal. Just a little feed upstream. I have got a bait dropper today and I'm going to use it, but I've been feeding upstream. It's probably why I've been getting a few bites quite far down the drift. But I will use the bait dropper just to get the bait down quickly. If you watch my videos in last season, I did mention that I drop the maggots at my feet, but that only allows you to drift in the line directly in front of you, and it is quite shallow up ahead, and most of my bites have been out in towards the sort of middle of the river and then letting this float swing round. So that's why I've been feeding slightly out into the river. But as the light fades, I'll certainly be drifting down the line that I'm on. Unless I move downstream. I'll see how it goes with the bites here. If they dry up, I can always move downstream and see if there's any, see what the runs are like down there. But because I've been getting bites here at the moment, it has taken a while to get bites here. But yeah, that's 2 fish landed and 4 fish lost. So yeah, I'll go over the setup, guys. For my 13-foot float rod, which is the Grayling red float, and I've got my centre pin reel on that, which is an NGT. The main line on the reel is 4.5 pound. That goes straight through to my float, and the float is called a Premier Grayling trotter. And like I said, it is quite heavy. This one holds up to 3 SSG, which is approximately 5 grams. And I've got an Olivet, which is a non-line Olivet, so it's locked in place either end with 2 bits of silicone. I do prefer a bolt shot with the Olivet rather than using crimped on shot. It's a personal preference thing, each to their own, and I like using Olivettes because they don't damage the line and they're easy adjustable as well. Plus I could change the float, plus if I wanted the Olivette slightly heavier, because it's an on-line Olivette, all I do is take the silicone sleeves off either end of the Olivette and put on a different size. Unlike the line through ones where you have to take it off your line. That comes down to a micro change swivel, and my hook length is £3. It's a ready tied hook length. I like the Grayling specimen hook lengths, and this is onto the size 16. It's a micro barb. Because I lost 4 fish initially, I was thinking maybe the 16 might be too small, but that's what I used last season and it was very good. I'll see how it goes. If I lose more fish, then I may up the size to a 14. And on the hook's just a double red maggot. I've been changing between 3 and 2 maggots, and that's a rig, guys. Super simple. So I'm just going to little feed, probably a dozen maggots or so, upstream. And because I want to sort of fish more to the middle just now, I keep my rod outstretched into the middle just to stop the float swinging round into the shallows too quick. And when I bring the float back into me, I try not to wind up the line that I just went down. So I've got my rod pointing into the shallows, and I'm just bringing that float in along the shallow water, rather than, you know, bouncing it across the water where I've been feeding, where I've been drifting, just to make as, you know, as little disturbance as I can on bringing the float back to me. I don't know if it helps, but it certainly can't do any harm. So guys, I'm going to have a little feed with the bait dropper, and this is a bait dropper. Basically how it works is you thread your hook through this little hoop, and there's a cork back, and you just put your hook into the cork back and that holds it upright. You load your bait in there. This is one of the small ones. Because I only feed sort of little and often anyway, I just put about, you know, 20 or 25 maggots in there at once. You shut the lid. The little plunger with the weight on, that holds this in place, holds the little lid in place, and when you sort of lob it out to where you want to drop your bait, that sinks to the bottom. That opens up, disperses your bait, and then you wind in and then bait up and then fish. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just threading the hook through the little loop, the wire loop, put my hook into the cork, making sure it's secure. Don't want this to bounce off the bottom and then that stays on the bottom and you've lost it forever. So it hangs like that. Some maggots. let's say just about 20, 25. Shut the lid, and that's it, ready to drop in. Just give it a little bounce. The little doors opened up. Obviously that bait's drifting downstream already, but it's already on the bottom, so it'll be much slower than falling through the water column and drifting downstream. And I'm just going to try and drift down that line where I've fed. Because that gets the bait down really quickly, it'll tend to drag fish up closer to you rather than having fish take you way down at the bottom of your drift. In theory anyway. It may take a few feeds and then the fish will start moving up. Obviously, because I've been feeding by hand, that will drift much further downstream before it sinks to the bottom. But if I keep feeding with the bait dropper, hopefully it'll bring the fish towards me. Fish on, guys. And it feels like a nice fish, although the current is really strong here, so it's hard to gauge. What I'm going to do is probably took me about halfway down the drift. And he gave some thumping head shakes when I stroke into it. Doing some mad head shakes. Oh, fish. It's just dogging me in that current there. It's got to be a grayling, surely. I'm trying get it out this flow a little bit. It's a bit softer water on the edge. Don't turn, don't turn. Oh. Come on, get your head up. Get your head up. It's a bit of a bruiser. Come on! Oh no! The net was folded. There we go. Lovely fish. Easy £2. It's had a few battle scars. It's been obviously had a go at by cormorant or something. Let's get the hook out. So guys, see if we can get a look at this fish, see if it will behave. Yeah, it's got a few battle scars, this fish. Lovely fish. Brilliant. Well over £2. Get this guy back. There we go. Now guys, I need to tell you about my first session of the winter on the river. It was on this river. It was on a different section, a different beat, and it was quite a quiet day. It was really cold. It was -5 that day, and I done the usual. I started off nymphing, had a couple of little fingerling sized grayling, and it was a little quiet for the first couple of hours. I hooked into this monster. This is the biggest grayling I've ever caught in terms of size, length, girth, across the shoulders. Biggest grayling I've ever caught, and it's actually the biggest grayling I've ever seen in real life. So, as you can imagine guys, I was literally jumping for joy on the bank because I thought I'd done it. I thought I'd hit the £3 mark, and anyone that looked at that fish, they'd be saying, yeah, £3 any day of the week. And that's what I thought. And then I put it on the scales. I put this fish on the scales, guys, and believe it or not, it didn't beat my previous PB of £2 11 ounces. It came in at £2 10 ounces, and I weighed this fish several times. I weighed it in pounds and ounces, I weighed it in ounces, and it all came out the same in terms of the weight, and it was £2 10 ounces. And this fish was 52 centimetres. You can see by the length of the rod where the marks are, that is a 50 centimetre mark, and you can see that that fish well exceeds the 50 centimetres. So yeah, as much as that fish was a stunning fish, it was in pristine condition, a lovely male fish, but yeah, didn't make £3. So anyway, I was convinced that those scales were faulty, even though they were brand new. That was the first time I'd ever used them in Anger, and they're a decent set of scales, you know, cost me about 65 quid. And yeah, I was convinced that these scales were faulty. So much so that I actually took those scales to my local fishmonger to get calibrated, and obviously use them against a weight that's been calibrated, and they were bang on, absolutely bang on. I weighed £3 weights, and I was 0.01 ounces out, and I'll give or take the plastic bag that I was using for that. So yeah, that was my first fish of the grayling season, and it's been my best one to date, even though it's not been the heaviest one.